I got a call on a Thursday night. It wasn't even late, just after dinner, and the guy on the other end introduced himself like he'd already spoken to me before. He said, "We need you to cover a shift. One of our night guards didn't show up." I almost said no. I don't usually take last-minute jobs, especially the graveyard shift, but the way he said it, it didn't sound like a request. It sounded like I had already agreed. The site was an old government facility on the edge of town. I didn't even know it was still active. They told me the pay was double for the night. I should have hung up right then, but something about his voice, it was calm, too calm, like he knew I wouldn't walk away. When I pulled up, the gate was already open. No guard shack, no one to greet me. Just this rusted fence and a sign so old the paint had peeled into strips. I parked and walked into the small security office by the main building. That's when I noticed it. On the desk was a notebook. Not the company logbook, but a small black notebook with pages curled at the edges. There was dried blood smeared across the cover, like someone had pressed their hand there before closing it. I told myself it was probably ketchup or paint or anything but what it looked like. But when I opened it, the first thing I saw wasn't a log entry. It was a rule. Do not open the back door after midnight. That was it. No explanation. The next page had another. Do not look into the hallway mirror after dark. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, like someone was scribbling it while panicking. I flipped through more pages and each one had another rule. The last page, it wasn't even finished. Just a sentence trailing off in thick, dark smears. And here's the thing. I had worked plenty of night shifts before. I'd seen guys leave dumb warnings, little jokes for the next guard to find, but this didn't feel like a joke. The notebook smelled like metal, like dried blood, and then I noticed something else. On the chair right by the desk, there were faint stains, drops. They led to the door. That's when the radio on the wall crackled to life. No one had given me a radio. I hadn't even touched it. And a voice whispered through the static. "You came to replace me, didn't you?" I stood there staring at that radio like it was alive. The voice had been soft, almost like someone speaking right into my ear. But when I leaned closer, the static returned and nothing else came through. I told myself I was just tired, maybe imagining it. But my hands were already shaking, and I hadn't even been on the job an hour. I picked the notebook back up. The blood had dried to a rusty brown, but the smell clung to my fingers. I started flipping through the rules again, slower this time. Rule 1, do not open the back door after midnight. Rule 2, do not look into the hallway mirror after dark. Rule 3, if you hear someone knocking from inside the storage room, do not answer. Rule 4, keep the lobby lights on at all times. If they go out, do not move until they return. Rule 5, never leave the radio unattended. If it goes silent for more than 5 minutes, run. Each rule made my stomach sink a little further. The guard who wrote this hadn't been joking. I could almost feel his panic in the scratches of the pen, in the way his letters dragged like his hand was trembling. I sat in the chair, trying to calm down, but then I noticed something on the floor. The drops I'd seen earlier didn't just stop at the door. They went out into the hallway. I followed them for a few feet, the sound of my boots echoing way too loud in the empty building. The stains disappeared near a long mirror fixed to the wall. It wasn't a normal mirror. The glass was cloudy, warped, like it had been there since the 70s. I caught my reflection in it, but it didn't look right. My face was pale. My eyes seemed darker than they should have been. For a second, I thought my reflection moved a fraction slower than I did. I stepped back, heart pounding, and remembered Rule 2. Do not look into the hallway mirror after dark. I forced myself to look away. I didn't know if it counted since I had already glanced at it, but I wasn't about to test it further. I went back to the office and tried to distract myself with the monitors. Most of the cameras were old black and white feeds, grainy and flickering. Hallways, storage rooms, stairwells. Nothing moved. I wanted it to stay that way. Then, at exactly 11:47, the radio crackled again. This time it wasn't a whisper. It was a steady voice, low and broken, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "You read the rules, didn't you?" I froze. My mouth was dry, but I managed to croak out, "Who is this?" Static. "Then don't open the back door, no matter what you hear." The line went dead. I stared at the radio, waiting for more, but the room felt heavier now. I couldn't shake the idea that the missing guard was still out there, maybe bleeding somewhere, maybe speaking to me through this damn device. The minutes dragged by. Midnight was coming, and of course that's when it started. At 12:03 I heard it. A knock. 3 slow raps on the back door. The sound echoed through the building like it was right behind me. I grabbed the flashlight, even though I already knew I shouldn't. Every nerve in my body told me to stay put, but curiosity pushed me into the hallway. The knocking came again, louder this time. I forced myself to the end of the hall where the metal back door stood. The air was colder there, like someone had left a freezer open. My breath came out in faint white clouds. The knocking stopped. I should have walked away, I know that, but then a voice came through the door, muffled, broken, like someone pressing their mouth against the metal. "Help me, please, they locked me out, I need to get in." It was a man's voice, shaky, desperate. I froze with my hand inches from the handle. The rules screamed in my head. Do not open the back door after midnight. But what if this was the missing guard? What if he had written the rules and now he was begging me to break one? I whispered through the door, "Who are you?" The voice paused, then, "You know who I am, you took my shift." My skin went cold. I backed away, slow, step by step. The voice changed as I moved, deepening into something else, something that didn't sound human anymore. "You can't ignore me forever." The knocking turned into pounding, rattling the door in its frame. I ran back to the office, slamming the door shut behind me. My heart was racing so hard it hurt. I sat there, clutching the radio, waiting for it to come alive again. The monitors flickered, one after the other, until only the camera pointing at the back door stayed lit. On the screen, the door wasn't shaking anymore, but someone was standing in front of it. A shadow, tall and still, its head tilted slightly like it knew I was watching. I couldn't breathe. And then, on the screen, it slowly turned and faced the hallway mirror. I sat frozen in that chair, the glow of the monitor painting my face in black and white shadows. The figure on the screen wasn't moving, not breathing, not swaying like a normal person would. Just standing there, a perfect silhouette, staring toward the mirror in the hallway like it was waiting for something to happen. I wanted to look away, but my eyes locked on it. My brain kept whispering that maybe it was just a trick of the camera, maybe some glitch in the old system. But then the screen flickered and I saw it tilt its head slowly to one side, like it was curious, like it knew I was on the other end. My chest tightened, and I realized I had been holding my breath. Then the lights in the office flickered too, just once, and I remembered Rule 4. Keep the lobby lights on at all times, do not move if they go out. That thought rooted me to the chair like chains. The air felt heavier, like gravity doubled in the room. The figure raised one arm on the monitor, and for the first time I saw detail. The hand wasn't shaped right. Too long, too thin, fingers that bent in ways they shouldn't. My stomach turned, and I forced myself to glance at the actual hallway on the other screen feed. Empty. Nothing but the warped mirror and the peeling paint on the walls. I thought maybe I was losing it. Maybe stress was making me hallucinate through the cameras. But then the radio hissed again, static swallowing the room, and I heard a voice. It wasn't the same tired voice from before. This one was jagged like glass scraping across steel. "Don't look too long, it'll notice." I flinched so hard the chair wheels squeaked on the floor. My pulse was hammering in my ears. I tried to answer, whispering, "What is it?" But the radio cut back to dead silence. I kept staring at the monitors, waiting for it to move again, but the figure was gone. Just gone. 1 second there. The next second the feed showed an empty space in front of the door. I felt a cold drop of sweat slide down my temple. I wanted to leave, to just get in my car and drive off. Rules be damned, paycheck be damned. But when I looked at the clock on the desk, it was 12:27. I still had hours until sunrise, and I knew deep down that leaving wasn't an option. Something in the way the rules were written, in the smell of dried blood on the pages, told me this wasn't a place you could walk away from so easily. So I stayed, every sound in the building turning into something suspicious. The hum of the vents, the creak of the old pipes, the faint scratching like rats inside the walls. I told myself it was normal. I told myself people survived nights here before me. Then at exactly 1:12, the monitor showing the storage room flickered. For a split second I saw something inside. Beds. Not cots, not folded chairs like you'd expect in a storage room, but hospital beds lined up, sheets pulled tight, all facing the same direction. And in one of them, I swear I saw the shape of a person under the blanket. I blinked, and the image was gone, replaced by shelves and boxes like a normal supply closet. My throat went dry. I pulled the notebook closer, flipping through the last pages, and found something scrawled in darker ink, like it had been pressed hard into the paper. "Don't believe the rooms, they change." My stomach flipped. I felt trapped, like I was caught in a maze that was rewriting itself around me. I leaned back in the chair, trying to convince myself I could hold it together, but then the sound came. Not knocking this time, not a voice. Breathing, slow, heavy, right outside the office door. I turned, flashlight shaking in my hand, and saw the bottom of the door move in and out like air was being pulled under it. My heart raced. The rules didn't say anything about this. I thought maybe if I stayed quiet, if I didn't move, it would leave. The breathing grew louder, more ragged, until I could hear a faint wetness in it, like whoever, or whatever, was out there had lungs filled with liquid. I gripped the radio like a lifeline, praying for it to crackle alive, but it didn't. Then, just as suddenly as it started, the sound stopped. I waited, sweat soaking my shirt, until finally I stood and inched toward the door. My hand hovered over the handle. I don't know why I wanted to open it, maybe just to prove I wasn't crazy. Maybe to convince myself no one was there. But before I could touch it, the monitor showing the hallway flickered, and there it was, the figure again. This time not by the back door, not by the mirror. It was right outside my office. On the screen I could see its outline standing inches from the very door I was reaching for. My body locked up. I pulled my hand back like I'd burned it. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move, just stared at the grainy black and white image of something that wasn't supposed to exist. The longer I looked, the more detail I saw. The way its head twitched unnaturally, the way its chest didn't rise or fall, the faint glint of something wet along its jaw. It leaned closer to the camera, and though the feed was too blurry to show a face, I swear its eyes met mine. A raw chill tore down my spine. Then the feed cut to static. I spun in the chair, half expecting the door to burst open, but nothing happened. Just silence. Empty silence so thick it felt alive. That's when I realized the rules weren't just guidelines. They were survival instructions. And maybe the guard before me hadn't made it out because he broke one. Or maybe because he tried to write his own. The clock ticked to 1:30. My shift wasn't even halfway over, and I already knew whatever this place was hiding, I wasn't supposed to see it. Not yet. The clock on the desk glowed 2:03. I hadn't moved since the last time the figure disappeared from the hallway feed. My eyes burned from staring at the monitors. But every time I thought about looking away, I felt like that's exactly when something would step through the door. The notebook sat open on my lap, pages filled with rules I'd memorized 3 times already. But I kept flipping through, as if maybe I'd missed a line that explained what happens when the cameras lie, or when breathing crawls through the crack of a door. That's when I noticed faint smudges on the page margins, streaks of red like whoever wrote them had blood on their fingers. At 2:07, the radio came alive again, not static this time. A sound faint, but enough to make the hair on my arm stand up. It was a scream, not loud, not close. Distant, like someone calling out from a long hallway. A woman's voice, sharp at the edges, broken in the middle, like she had been screaming for hours. My pulse jumped. I looked at the hallway monitor, half expecting to see someone running toward the office, but it was empty, silent. My hand shook as I brought the radio closer to my ear. The scream faded, then repeated. The same pitch, the same broken ending, like a recording, over and over. That's when I noticed something strange. The sound wasn't just on the radio. I could hear it faintly through the walls, echoing down the empty corridors of the building itself. I pressed my palm flat against the cold plaster, and the vibration carried into my skin. It was real. The notebook had a rule I hadn't paid much attention to before. Rule 6. If you hear someone calling for help, do not answer. Do not follow. It's not them anymore. Not them anymore. I whispered the words to myself like a prayer, trying to drown out the steady rhythm of the scream. My brain wanted to argue, wanted to believe maybe someone really was trapped. Maybe the missing guard, maybe a cleaner, maybe anybody who didn't deserve to be here alone. But my gut twisted, warning me. The voice had no pauses, no desperate breathing, no variation. Just that same cry on loop like a broken record. I told myself I wouldn't move. Just stay put, keep my eyes on the monitors. But the building seemed to have other plans. At 2:15, the camera feed for the west stairwell flickered. For a single frame, I saw her. A woman in a torn dress, standing halfway up the stairs, head tilted back as the scream ripped from her throat. Her face blurred by the static, but the outline was enough. She wasn't walking toward the camera, she wasn't moving at all. Just stuck there, mouth open, arms hanging limp. I jerked back from the monitor so hard the chair rolled an inch. The notebook slipped from my lap and hit the floor, pages fluttering open to the last entry. New words I hadn't seen before, written in jagged, rushed letters. She's looking for a replacement. My throat closed. I wanted to believe the guard before me had written it, but the ink looked fresh, darker than the rest, like it had just been pressed into the page. I didn't remember seeing it earlier. The scream stopped. The sudden silence was worse. My ears rang with the absence of it, every small sound in the office magnified until I swore I could hear my own heartbeat echoing. That's when a new noise crept in, a knock, soft at first. 1, 2, 3, coming from the office door. The rules had said nothing about knocking. My breath caught in my chest. I leaned toward the door as if that would help me understand what was on the other side. The knocks came again, louder, steadier, like whoever it was wanted to be let in. The monitors still showed the hallway empty, but I knew better. The cameras were liars. The knocks turned into pounding. The door rattled in its frame, each thud digging into my spine. I grabbed the flashlight, hand trembling, and pointed it at the crack at the bottom of the door. That's when I saw it: fingers. Thin, gray, too many knuckles bending in too many directions. They slid under the door like worms searching for light. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the chair. My body screamed to run, but where? The pounding stopped. Silence swallowed the room again, but I couldn't shake the image of those fingers. I forced myself to glance back at the notebook. On the back cover, scratched deep into the cardboard, were 5 words I hadn't noticed before. Don't let her inside. Her. The woman in the stairwell, the endless scream, the replacement. The radio hissed again. A male voice this time, tired, broken. Don't open it, please. I did once. Don't. Static cut him off. I froze. That had to be the last guard. Maybe his final warning, bleeding through whatever space separated the living from the ones who didn't leave. The clock read 2:27. Somehow, I was still breathing, still alive, still inside the office. But I knew the night wasn't done with me. Not even close. Because then I heard it. Not knocking, not breathing, not screaming. Something worse. My own voice, calling my name from the hallway. When you hear your own voice calling your name from the other side of a locked door, something inside you breaks. It's not panic anymore, it's disbelief. My first thought wasn't even fear. It was how. How could my voice be out there when I was right here? My second thought came much quicker. If it sounded like me, maybe it knew everything I knew, including the rules. Hey, it called again, quieter this time, like a whisper meant for me alone. The tone was perfect. Same cadence, same inflection, down to the way my throat sometimes cracked on certain vowels. Open the door, it's safe now. I didn't move. My hand hovered near the notebook like it was a shield, though I knew paper couldn't stop what was out there. The silence stretched. Then the voice laughed, just once, soft. And that laugh didn't belong to me. It was too low, too sharp at the end, like it was testing how well it could mimic human sound. That's when the office lights flickered, the monitor showing the hallway cut to static, and the knocking came back, this time from the inside of the room. I spun so fast the chair tipped. Empty. Nothing there. But the sound had been real, knuckles rapping wood, except the desk was the only thing it could have come from. I swallowed hard and lifted the flashlight, pointing it under the desk. Just the chair legs, dust, wires, no fingers, no shapes waiting. I crouched lower, and that's when I noticed it, carved into the underside of the desk. Don't crouch, don't look too close. My stomach dropped. How had I not seen that before? I bolted upright, nearly knocking my head on the desk. The pounding on the door returned, heavier now, each slam bending the hinges. Dust rained from the ceiling with every hit. The notebook slid off the desk and landed face up at my feet. A page fluttered open like it wanted me to read it. Rule 9. If it breaches the door, the office is no longer safe. You must move before it enters, or you won't leave at all. I whispered it out loud, trying to lock the words into my head. Move before it enters. My eyes darted to the monitors. Every hallway blurred with static except one, the basement stairwell. That feed was clear, too clear. The camera showed a staircase leading down into pitch darkness, but the first few steps were lit like they were waiting for me. The pounding on the door cracked the frame. Splinters shot across the floor. Whatever was outside wasn't waiting anymore. I had seconds. I grabbed the flashlight, the radio, and the notebook. My legs didn't feel like they were mine as I forced myself toward the side exit at the back of the office. The door creaked when I pushed it open, and I half expected to see her, the screaming woman, waiting there. But the hallway was empty. Cold air drifted through, carrying that metallic tang I'd started to associate with blood. Behind me, the office door gave one last groan, then burst. The sound of wood splintering filled the air. I didn't look back. I couldn't, I just ran. My footsteps echoed off the walls, too loud, bouncing back at me until it sounded like a dozen people running in sync. The radio hissed in my pocket, spitting fragments of words I couldn't make out. My chest burned, but I didn't stop until I reached the stairwell I'd seen on the feed. The stairwell smelled damp, like mold and wet stone. I shined the flashlight down, but the beam barely pierced the darkness. It felt wrong, like the light itself didn't want to go further, but the rules didn't say anything about avoiding the basement. And if the office wasn't safe anymore, maybe this was the only option. I descended one step at a time. My hand trailed the railing, slick with something I didn't want to identify. My heartbeat slowed as the pounding above faded. Maybe I'd outrun it. Maybe it couldn't follow me down here. Halfway down, I heard breathing. Not mine, not above me. Below, deep, slow inhales, each one rattling like broken glass in a throat. My flashlight trembled in my grip, the beam shaking across the steps. I stopped breathing, as if holding my breath would somehow hide me. Then the radio spoke, clearer than it ever had before. A man's voice, calm, almost steady. "If you've made it this far, you're already in deeper than I was. Don't stop now. The breach isn't the end, it's the beginning. Keep the notebook close. And whatever you do, don't let them see your reflection." Static swallowed his words again. I stood frozen, the weight of every choice pressing down. The office was gone, safety was gone, and ahead of me something waited in the dark, my own reflection or something wearing it. The scream came back then, faint from far below. But this time it wasn't a recording, it was fresh, alive, and it was my voice. The deeper I went, the more I realized the stairwell wasn't just a way down, it was some kind of test. The air felt heavier with every step, like the walls themselves were closing in. My flashlight fought the dark, but the beam was weak, barely enough to see 3 steps ahead. And yet I kept going because the notebook told me one truth I couldn't ignore. Once a place is breached, it's no longer yours. The office was gone. This was the only path left. At the bottom, the concrete gave way to tile. White at some point, but stained now, brown, black, streaks of red. The kind of stains that never wash out. My boots left faint prints, and for a second I imagined someone coming behind me, tracking where I'd been. The breathing I'd heard earlier was gone. Too gone. Silence can be worse than sound, because at least sound tells you where something is. Silence makes you realize you might already be standing in the middle of it. I aimed the light down the hall. Fluorescent bulbs flickered overhead, some buzzing faintly like dying insects. That sickly yellow glow gave the place the feel of a hospital basement, except this wasn't a hospital. The layout was too narrow, the doors too close together. That's when I noticed the signs on the walls, not printed, not painted, carved. Jagged letters scratched deep into the plaster. "Watch yourself." The radio hissed, then clicked. A woman's voice this time, sharp, like she was out of breath. "If you're hearing this, then you're in the trial. Don't run, don't fight. Just follow the hall, you'll know the door when you see it. And when you open it, look straight ahead, not at the mirrors." Mirrors. The hall stretched out longer than it should have, every few feet another door on either side. Some closed, some cracked open just enough to show darkness inside. My flashlight beam passed over one doorway and something inside shifted, too quick to be real. Like a trick of my eyes, I didn't stop. The first mirror appeared after 20 paces, floor to ceiling, nailed into the wall. My reflection stared back at me, pale and wide-eyed, the beam of the flashlight trembling in my grip, but the reflection didn't shake. It stood steady, calm, almost smug. I froze. The rule was clear. Don't let them see your reflection. I yanked my gaze away and pressed forward. But every few steps, another mirror. Some cracked, some perfectly smooth. And in every one, my reflection wasn't quite me. Sometimes the smile was too wide. Sometimes the eyes followed too slow, lagging behind like they were choosing when to move. I whispered under my breath, almost like a prayer, "Straight ahead, just keep walking." The doors on the sides creaked as I passed, like they were leaning closer, listening. One slammed shut behind me without warning. The sound echoed so loud I nearly dropped the flashlight. When I spun, the hallway behind me was gone, just more doors, more mirrors. No exit. I knew then this wasn't a basement. It wasn't even part of the building. It was a constructed space, something built for people like me, the ones sent to replace, the ones who needed to be tested. The initiation. My throat was dry when I finally saw it, the door. Not wood, not metal, something else. Matte black with no handle, no frame, just standing at the end of the hall like it had grown out of the wall itself. I approached, every step slower than the last. My reflection in the nearest mirror leaned forward, lips moving like it was whispering, but no sound came. I forced myself to look away, to keep my eyes on the door. When I reached it, the notebook slipped from my grip. It fell open on the floor, pages splayed. One sentence was scrawled across both pages in handwriting that wasn't the same as the notes before. To enter, you must give yourself away. I didn't know what it meant. Sacrifice, surrender. I pressed my hand to the door. It was cold, too cold, like touching ice. Then the surface rippled under my palm like water. I felt the pull. Not physical, not at first, something deeper. Like it was tugging at the part of me that thought, that remembered. For a moment I wasn't sure if my name was still mine or if it belonged to whatever was on the other side. The radio clicked again, the same woman's voice, but weaker this time. If you open it, you'll change. That's the point. No one comes out the same. That's why no one quits. That's why no one ever can quit. My heart hammered. My choices were gone. Behind me, the mirrors whispered, the voices growing louder, like 100 versions of me begging to be let out. I did the only thing I could. I pushed. The door gave way. The light that poured out wasn't light at all. It was absence, a void that swallowed the beam of my flashlight whole. My skin crawled, every instinct screaming to stop. But my foot lifted anyway, stepping through like I was being guided. And just before the darkness claimed me, I heard it again. The scream. Except this time it wasn't mine. It was the guard. The one I'd come to replace. Still alive. Still trapped. And suddenly I understood. The initiation wasn't just a test. It was a replacement. A cycle. And I had just taken my first step into his role. When I stepped through that black door, I thought I was walking into darkness. But it wasn't darkness, it was a room. A room lit by a single bulb swaying overhead, buzzing like it was about to die. The walls weren't made of concrete or metal. They looked like wood, but when I ran my hand across them, they were warm, almost like skin. I pulled my hand back quick. In the middle of the room stood a chair. Old, wooden, too ordinary compared to everything else I'd seen. On the chair was a folder. Not a notebook this time, but a manila folder stuffed with papers. My name was written across the front in thick black marker, not just my last name, my full name. I froze. No one should have known that, not here, not this deep. I opened the folder. The first page wasn't typed. It was handwritten like the notebook had been. It read, "You are no longer you, you belong to us. To stay, you must swear. To leave, you must bleed. Choose." That was it. No instructions, no comforting words, just that. The radio on my hip clicked again, but this time no voice came. Just static, static that rose and fell like breathing. It made me feel watched, judged. Then I noticed the walls. They had carvings too. Dozens of names scratched deep into the surface, some old, some fresh. And next to some of those names, stains, darker than the wood, darker than anything I'd seen. I walked closer. That's when I realized those weren't just names, they were signatures, oaths. Each name marked the moment someone gave up who they were and swore to something else. I backed up. My chest was tight. This was it, the point where people either committed or got erased. The notebook hadn't lied. Nobody quits, not because they don't want to, but because the system doesn't let them. The folder's second page slid free. It had 3 rules written across it, not long paragraphs, just single sentences, clear as day. You obey without question. You stay until replaced. If you refuse, you will not leave whole. I read them twice, then a third time because my brain wouldn't accept them, but my hands were already shaking and I could feel the weight of the choice pressing down. That's when the bulb overhead flickered out. Total darkness swallowed the room. My flashlight should have worked, but it didn't. The clicker was dead, like the batteries had been drained. And then I heard it, shuffling feet circling the chair. I couldn't see, but I could hear the rhythm. Someone pacing, slow, patient. The air shifted as if something was walking right past me, brushing against my sleeve. I whispered, "Who's there?" My voice cracked. No answer, just the scrape of shoes across the floor. Then out of nowhere, a whisper against my ear, not from the radio, from the air itself. "Say the words or you take his place forever." I spun, but there was no one. Just that chair, glowing faintly now with its own pale light. The folder sat open on the seat, pages fluttering like they were being blown by a breeze I couldn't feel. At the bottom of the last page, I finally saw it, the oath. A simple line, nothing fancy. "I give myself to the agency. I leave behind who I was. I will obey and I will stay until I am replaced." There was a space for my signature beneath it. My throat tightened. I didn't want this. I didn't sign up for this. But then I remembered the scream. The guard. The man I was supposed to replace. If he was still down here, alive but trapped, maybe this was the only way to find him. Maybe the oath wasn't an ending, it was a key. The shuffling stopped. Silence. The kind of silence that feels like a blade against your neck. My pen was still clipped to my shirt pocket. I don't even remember pulling it out, but suddenly it was in my hand, uncapped. My fingers hovered over the paper. And I swear to you, I wasn't the one who moved them. My hand started writing on its own. My name flowed onto the line, neat, steady. The ink bled into the paper until it looked less like writing and more like veins spreading out, feeding into the page. The bulb snapped back on. The folder slammed shut, and the chair was empty. No voices now, no footsteps, just the radio crackling softly. Then, clear as ever, the woman's voice returned. "Welcome, guard, you've taken the oath. From now on, you are one of us. You will learn the rest in time. But know this, he never left, and neither will you." The static swallowed her voice, but I didn't need the rest. My chest was heavy. My name wasn't mine anymore. My role wasn't mine either. I wasn't sent here to replace him. I was sent here to become him. That was the first oath. And from that moment on, I wasn't free. Not really. The radio crackled again, softer this time, almost gentle, like the agency wanted me to feel safe now that I'd signed. but I didn't feel safe. My hand still tingled from the way the pen had moved on its own. I kept staring at the folder, half expecting it to open again, but it didn't. The bulb swayed above me, buzzing like an insect, throwing shadows across the walls where all those names were scratched. Some of them looked fresh, too fresh, as if they'd been written only hours ago. The voice finally came back, calm, steady. "Guard, your first task is simple. Patrol the East Wing. Do not deviate. Do not investigate sounds you cannot explain. You will find what remains of your predecessor's post there. When the clock strikes 3, return." That was it. No good luck, no explanation of why, just orders. I wanted to throw the radio against the wall. Instead, I clipped it back to my vest, because a part of me knew if I broke it, I wouldn't last another hour. The East Wing wasn't far. A narrow hallway stretched out ahead with flickering lights that seemed to die out the moment I stepped under them. The smell hit me first, like rust and mold, but sharper, metallic. Blood leaves a smell that sticks in your throat. I'd learned that back when I worked security at a mall after a fight in the parking lot. This was stronger. I passed by door after door, each one sealed shut with thick locks. Some had scratches on the outside, long grooves like someone had clawed at them to get in or maybe out. I didn't stop. I remembered the rule, don't deviate. The radio crackled again. Left side, third door. I stopped in front of it. The door was dented, almost bowed inward. Dried stains covered the bottom edge. I didn't want to know if it was rust or blood. My flashlight flickered across the surface, and that's when I noticed it. Faint writing etched into the metal, the same handwriting as the notebook. "Don't let them see you flinch." I stood frozen, my breath fogging in the cold air. Whoever wrote that, it had to be the last guard. He knew someone would come after him. He knew I'd be standing here. I unlocked the door with the key that had been left on the chair. The hinges groaned as it opened and the smell hit harder. Inside was a tiny security post, just a desk, a chair, a cracked monitor still glowing faintly green. Papers were scattered across the floor, and in the corner, something dark stained the concrete. I didn't get closer to check. On the desk was another folder. Not a manila one this time. Black with a single word embossed in red, assignment. I opened it slowly, bracing myself for more insane rules, and sure enough, that's what I found. Assignment 1. Remain seated from 2:00 a.m. to 3:00 a.m. Do not look at the monitor if the static changes. Do not leave the room until the knock comes 3 times. Do not respond if it comes 4. My throat dried out as I read those words. This wasn't security work. This was ritual. Some twisted system designed to keep order in a place that didn't make sense. The radio clicked again. "Guard, you must comply. Failure means replacement." Replacement, that word again, it echoed in my head. The clock on the desk ticked softly, the only sound in the room. 1:55 a.m., 5 minutes until I had to start. I sat in the chair. It creaked under me, like it hadn't been used in years. The monitor in front of me buzzed with static, shifting in waves. At first, it was just white noise, but then shapes began forming in it. Faint outlines, a face maybe, or maybe my mind was just desperate to make sense of the chaos. 2:00 a.m. The second hand clicked and the air in the room changed, heavy, charged, like the whole place was holding its breath. I tried to focus on the rules. Don't look if the static changes. Don't leave until the knock comes 3 times. The first 10 minutes crawled by. I kept my eyes on the desk, not the monitor. The static grew louder though, like it wanted my attention. I forced myself to look at my hands, steady them, breathe slow. Then the static changed, not subtle. It went from white noise to pitch black, the screen swallowing itself whole. And out of that black, something began to form. Pale hands pressed against the inside of the glass. Fingers stretching, tapping as if someone or something was trapped inside trying to push through. My instinct screamed to look, to figure out what I was seeing, but the rule was clear: don't look. I shut my eyes tight, counting in my head. Tap, tap, tap. I thought it was the monitor. Then I realized it wasn't. It was the door. 3 knocks. My chest nearly burst from holding my breath. The rules said 3 minutes was safe. I forced my legs to move, to stand, to walk to the door. My hand hovered over the handle. Then, before I could turn it, a 4th knock. Sharp, loud, final. I froze, my whole body locked. 4 knocks meant what? Don't respond, that's what it said. I backed away from the door slowly, my breath shallow. The monitor behind me hissed again, static flaring bright, filling the room with its glow. The pale hands were gone now, replaced by eyes, dozens of them pressed against the glass, staring, unblinking. The radio hissed, and the voice came back, quieter than ever. Guard, do not open the door, not tonight. The replacement isn't ready. The clock struck 3. The static vanished. The eyes disappeared. The air lightened again, as if nothing had happened. I sat back in the chair, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. That was my first assignment, and it wasn't to protect anything. It was to survive. When I finally walked out, folder in hand, the hallway was silent. But scratched into the wall across from the door was a new message, carved deep, still fresh. You passed, for now. When I stepped back into the hallway, folder clutched to my chest, I thought I'd finally be able to breathe. The assignment was done. The clock had struck 3, but the air didn't feel lighter the way I hoped it would. It felt heavier, thicker, like the walls themselves knew I had crossed some line. The corridor stretched on, same peeling paint, same flickering lights, but it was different now. I swear the floor creaked softer, almost muffled, like something didn't want me to be heard. That's when the radio clicked again. Guard, proceed to the Hall of Echoes. Follow the main corridor until you see the archway. Do not stop for voices. Do not answer them. They are not yours, not mine. What the hell did that mean? Still, I walked. My boots echoed faintly against the concrete, bouncing back to me in a strange rhythm. At first, I thought it was normal acoustics. Then I noticed my steps weren't matching what I heard. I'd take a step, and the echo would lag, then double, then split, like 2 versions of me walking slightly out of sync. I kept my eyes forward. The archway came into view, a cracked stone curve built into the middle of the facility like it belonged to some old cathedral. On the other side was a long, dark hall. No lights, just shadows, but carved into the arch were words scratched so deep the stone had split. Don't lose your name. I swallowed hard. The moment I stepped through, sound changed. My footsteps didn't just echo, they whispered back my name over and over. Alex. At least I thought it was my name. It sounded like my voice, but stretched, warped, pulled apart. Alex, Alex, Alex. The walls whispered it, the floor whispered it, even the air carried it. I tried to ignore it, gripping the folder tight. The rules had been clear: don't answer voices, keep walking. But then the whispers shifted. Help me. That stopped me cold. It wasn't my name anymore. It was a plea, a broken, desperate voice that sounded familiar. I turned my head just slightly toward the shadows on the left wall. That's when I saw it. A shape, thin and bent, crouched low, its hands pressed to the floor. The face, I almost wish I hadn't seen the face, because it looked like me, pale, hollow-eyed. My lips moving silently even though the words came from everywhere at once. Help me. My throat went dry. My instinct screamed to answer, to say something, anything. But my memory clung to the rules. Don't answer. They're not yours, so I kept walking. Every step I took, the whispers grew louder, layering on top of each other until it wasn't just one voice but dozens. All mine, all calling. Some begged, some mocked, some cursed. It was like walking through a tunnel of myself, every mistake, every regret, every thought I'd ever tried to bury, spitting back at me through the dark. I kept my eyes on the faint light ahead, a small glow at the far end of the hall. I just had to reach it, but the voices didn't stop. You won't make it. They'll replace you. You're already dead. And then, clear as day, cutting through the rest, came my mother's voice. Alex, please turn around. I froze. My mom's been gone for years. But the way she said it, soft, pleading, the way she used to call me in for dinner when I was a kid, I almost broke. My lips even parted, ready to say, Mom. But before the word could leave my mouth, the radio hissed so violently I nearly dropped it. Do not speak. The voice was sharp, commanding, and it snapped me back. My chest heaved as I forced myself to keep walking, fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. The glow at the end grew brighter. I stumbled toward it, ignoring the whispers clawing at me, the shadows writhing at the edges of my vision. When I finally crossed the threshold, the air shifted again. The whispers stopped. The silence hit so hard it almost hurt my ears. I collapsed against the wall, sucking in breaths like I just surfaced from underwater. In front of me was a new chamber. Not wide, but tall, with walls covered in mirrors, cracked, dusted, warped. My own reflection stared back at me 100 times over. Some were older, some younger, some smiling, some grimacing. But none of them matched the way I looked right now. On the floor, at the center of the chamber, was another message carved deep into the concrete. The Hall of Echoes knows you. Do you know yourself? The radio clicked softly. Guard, you've passed through for now. Sit. Wait for the next rule. I wanted to throw up. My head spun with the sound of my own voice still echoing inside my skull. My hands shook as I lowered myself onto the cold floor. That's when I noticed it, scratched faintly into the mirror directly ahead of me, almost hidden under the cracks. The handwriting was the same as before, the same as the notebook. The next part is worse. I sat there on the cold floor trying to calm my breathing, but the silence was worse than the whispers. It pressed in from all sides, heavy and unnatural. The only sound was the faint crackle of the radio in my hand. Then I realized my reflection hadn't stopped moving. At first, I thought it was a trick of the flickering light, but no. My chest was rising and falling, steady, exhausted. The reflection just wasn't syncing with me. A half-second delay, sometimes longer. My reflection blinked before I did, smiled when my face was blank, and one of them, off to the far right, wasn't sitting at all, it was standing. I couldn't look at it too long, my stomach twisted when I did. The radio crackled again, the same flat voice as before. Guard, you've entered the mirror chamber. Do not acknowledge them. They watch. They learn. Keep your eyes low. Wait. Keep my eyes low. Easier said than done. There were mirrors everywhere, floor to ceiling. Each one cracked and dirty, but still showing enough detail to make me sick. I lowered my gaze to the concrete, tracing the scratches in the floor just to avoid my own face. But curiosity is a bastard. You can't help it. You look. That's when I saw it. The reflection directly ahead wasn't copying me anymore. It leaned forward, palms pressed against the glass, watching me like an animal in a cage. Its lips moved silently over and over. I strained not to read them, but eventually I made it out. Switch. My hands shook. My breathing turned shallow. I gripped the folder tighter, hoping the weight of it would ground me, remind me that I was still here, still real. That's when another reflection, this one to my left, raised a hand and pressed it to the glass, slowly, deliberately, and my arm tingled. It was like someone had pressed an ice cube to my skin. I jerked back, clutching my elbow, but the reflection was smiling. Not me, not at all me. The radio hissed again, louder this time, like the voice knew I was faltering. "Guard, do not mimic, do not engage. If they reach through, it is over. Stay still, wait." I wanted to scream at the voice. Wait for what? But then the chamber itself seemed to breathe. The mirrors fogged, a thin mist spreading across the glass, and shapes began to appear behind the reflections. Dozens of figures, faceless, crowding, pressing in closer as if trying to push my reflections forward. That's when I realized these weren't just mirrors, they were windows, and something on the other side was pushing to get out. The reflections' mouths moved faster now, some shouting, some laughing, some crying, but no sound came. My name formed again and again. Alex, Alex. The same warped chant from the Hall of Echoes, now trapped in glass. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't matter. The sound wasn't real, it was inside my head. Then one mirror cracked sharply. A line shot across it like lightning. The reflection inside grinned, wider than a human mouth should. I scrambled back, but there was nowhere to go. The chamber was closed tight. Every surface showed me something wrong with myself. The radio voice broke through the static again, but this time it wasn't calm. It was urgent. "Guard, Rule 3, if a mirror breaks, do not look at it, do not let it see you." Too late, my eyes were locked. The reflection in the cracked glass tilted its head the way a predator sizes up prey. Its hand pressed harder, and the crack widened. Tiny shards trembled in the frame like teeth ready to fall. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching the folder like it could protect me. I counted breaths. 1, 2, 3, my heartbeat thundered in my chest. Silence. When I dared to open my eyes again, the crack was gone. The mirror was whole, but the reflection inside was gone too. My stomach dropped. I scanned the room. Every mirror still held a version of me except that one. It was empty, just dark glass, like a doorway waiting to be stepped through. That's when I felt it, a hand on my shoulder, cold, firm, real. I spun around, no one was there. But in the mirrors behind me, every reflection had a hand on their shoulder. A perfect line of movement, synchronized, mocking. My throat locked. I couldn't even breathe. The radio hissed again, but softer now, almost like it was whispering directly into my ear. "Guard, you are not alone. Remember this, they cannot leave unless you trade places. Do not give them your name. Do not give them your eyes." I sat frozen, trembling, staring at the empty mirror. My reflection should have been there. It wasn't. And for the first time since I walked into this nightmare, I realized something simple but terrifying. I wasn't sure I was the one still on this side. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at that empty mirror. My body was trembling so bad I thought I might just collapse and never stand up again. The folder felt like dead weight in my lap, useless. My reflection should have been there, but the glass only showed darkness, like a tunnel that didn't end. The radio crackled again. The voice was lower now, like it didn't want to be heard by whatever was on the other side. "Guard, listen carefully. The lost ones will try to make contact. They'll want your name. If you give it, you trade places. You stay there, they come here. That's the rule. Don't speak. Don't speak. That should have been easy, right? Just keep my mouth shut. But you don't understand how powerful silence becomes when something is waiting for you to break it." I kept my head down, breathing into my sleeve, whispering nothing words to myself just to stay sane. But then, a voice came from the mirror, not through the radio, through the glass. It sounded exactly like me. Same pitch, same rhythm, but not quite right, too calm, too steady. It said one word, my name. Alex. My heart seized. I wanted to run, but there was nowhere to go. The chamber was sealed, every surface coated in silver and shadow. The voice repeated, Alex, don't be afraid, I can help you. I shook my head hard, clamping both hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The words pressed directly into my mind, like it wasn't speaking to my ears at all. You don't belong here. They sent you to replace me. Don't you get it? You're the trade. My stomach turned. The folder slid from my lap, spilling papers across the floor. Rules, notes, warnings, all of it useless now. The mirror pulsed once like a heartbeat. The glass rippled outward, and for just a second I thought I saw a hand push through, stretching the surface like water. I scrambled back, hitting my shoulders against another mirror behind me. Wrong move, because that one lit up instantly, showing me, but not me. This reflection had no eyes, just smooth skin where they should have been, and still somehow it was staring right at me. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened until I thought I'd pass out. The voice from the empty mirror kept going, steady, calm, insistent. Say it, say your name. It's the only way you leave. They told you not to, didn't they? They lied. They always lie. The radio broke in again, louder than ever, almost shouting in my ear. Guard, do not answer. Rule 5, if they ask for your name, hold your silence. The lost ones hunger for identity. Without it, they can't take form. My hands shook so bad the radio almost slipped. My head whipped back and forth between the empty mirror and the eyeless one. They were both waiting, both patient. I pressed my forehead to my knees, whispering, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak. But then, the voice changed. It wasn't mine anymore. It was my mother's, clear as day, gentle, familiar. Alex, honey, you're tired. Just tell them I'm waiting for you, please. Tears burned my eyes instantly. It wasn't fair. It wasn't fair to use her. My throat tightened. My lips almost moved, almost. And that's when the eyeless reflection started to mimic me, my exact movements. Every twitch, every breath, but just slightly delayed. Until I blinked, it didn't. Instead, it opened its mouth, and my voice came out, my actual voice, whispering my name. I felt it clawing into my chest like it was trying to rip it out of me. My jaw locked. My teeth ground so hard my skull ached. The radio hissed again. Not words this time, just static. Loud, piercing static, enough to break the trance. I slammed the dial off. Silence dropped heavy again. I forced my head up, staring into the dark mirror. My own pale, terrified face finally stared back. My reflection had returned. But I didn't feel relief, because I didn't blink. It did. That's when I knew one of us wasn't real anymore. I stayed frozen, knees pulled tight to my chest until the chamber lights flickered. The door behind me hissed open, releasing a stale breath of air. The radio buzzed one last time, the voice quieter, almost like it pitied me. Guard, you survived the name trade, but you left a piece behind. Remember that. You won't be whole again. I stumbled out, dragging the folder, my throat raw, my skin crawling. The hall beyond was darker than before, lined with more rules painted onto the walls. But I couldn't read them. My eyes kept catching on every reflective surface, terrified I'd see the wrong me again. And for the first time, I wondered if I already had. When I stepped out of the mirror chamber, I thought I'd feel safer. Like walking away from that glass box would mean leaving it all behind. But the air outside felt heavier, thicker, like the hallway itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what I'd do next. The folder was still clutched in my hand. My fingers left sweaty marks on the cover. I didn't even realize I'd ripped one of the pages from gripping too tight. The rules were useless in the chamber, but I couldn't let them go. They were the only thing that looked solid in a place where nothing stayed real for long. That's when I noticed something new. A smear across the next wall, not paint, not ink, blood. It stretched from one corner to the next like someone had been dragged, heels leaving faint marks along the ground. The line stopped at a door with no handle, only a slit at eye level like a prison cell. Above it, scratched deep into the steel, was a sentence. Rule 9, when blood marks the path, follow but do not touch. I whispered it out loud without meaning to. My voice cracked. The blood trail wasn't old. It was dark, wet in some places, almost fresh. I crouched, leaning in close before catching myself. Don't touch. The warning screamed inside me. My fingers hovered an inch away and then pulled back fast. I followed it, step after step. Every few feet the smear thickened, as though the person leaving it had been bleeding heavier. My stomach churned, and I had to cover my mouth to keep from gagging. The trail led me down 2 more corridors, turning sharp corners like it wanted me to lose track of where I'd started. Finally, it ended at a staircase spiraling down. The bottom was swallowed in shadow. Something about the air there was colder, not natural cold, like walking into a basement after years sealed shut. I gripped the railing, careful not to touch the streak of blood running along it. The rules didn't explain what would happen if I did, and I wasn't about to find out. Halfway down, the radio crackled again. Static first, then the voice. You found it. Good. Keep moving. At the bottom, you'll see the truth of the guard you replaced. Don't lose focus. And whatever happens, don't step in the blood. My throat tightened. I didn't answer. I couldn't. At the bottom, I found another door. This one wasn't locked. Just heavy. I pushed and it groaned open. The smell hit me first. Copper, decay, and something chemical, sharp, almost sweet. My stomach rolled, but I forced myself in. The room looked like a medical ward. Beds lined both walls, rusted frames, thin mattresses. Every single one was stained dark. Some still had shapes under the sheets, too still to be alive. And then I saw the rules again, this time not written in ink or paint. They were carved into the walls with something jagged, letters uneven but clear enough to read. Rule 10, the blood remembers. Don't let it know you. My knees almost gave out. I didn't even know what that meant, but I could feel it in my bones. It wasn't good. One of the beds creaked, just slightly. My head snapped toward it. The sheet shifted, slowly, like something underneath was breathing. I froze, heart hammering. The air buzzed with a sound I couldn't place, like a faint humming, low and steady. The sheet lifted higher, but nothing came out. Just that steady rise and fall, like lungs pulling air. I took one step back, then another. My heel almost slipped on the floor, and that's when I realized I was inches from a puddle, dark, sticky, blood. I jumped back, my chest seizing, barely keeping my boots from touching it. For a second, I thought I saw the puddle ripple, like it reacted, like it knew. The radio whispered again, not loud enough to echo, just brushing my ear. They can smell names in the blood. If you step in it, it will know you. I didn't breathe, didn't move. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, but the puddles were everywhere now. Some fresh, some dried into dark patches. Navigating between them was like crossing a minefield. I forced myself forward, slow, careful. My eyes kept darting to the beds. Some sheets rose and fell like breathing. Others stayed perfectly flat, but I swear I could hear whispers leaking out from under them. Finally, at the far end, I saw another mirror, not like the chambers. This one was cracked, spiderweb lines running across its surface. In the middle of it, someone had smeared a bloody handprint. I wanted to turn back. Every cell in my body begged me not to go closer. But the rules were clear: follow the blood, and I had. As I stood there frozen, the reflection in that cracked glass moved, but I hadn't. It was him. The missing guard. His eyes were hollow. His uniform torn, soaked through with blood. He lifted one trembling hand and pointed at me. His lips moved, but no sound came through. Then slowly, he pressed his finger to the handprint on the glass, and the bloody mark dripped fresh. I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop staring. The radio hissed, then spoke one last line before going dead. "You've seen enough. Leave before it remembers you're here." I bolted, dodging puddles, ducking past beds, my breath ragged. The moment I slammed the door shut, the humming cut off, leaving only silence. But silence wasn't safe anymore. Because as I leaned against the door, gasping, I noticed something on my boot. A streak, dark red, blood. And I had no idea if it already knew my name. I didn't want to look down. I really didn't. But when I saw that streak of blood on my boot, it felt like the world around me tilted. I kept telling myself maybe it was old, maybe it had dried long ago and wouldn't know me like the rules warned. But a small voice in the back of my head whispered the truth. Blood was blood, and rules didn't care about excuses. I pulled at my sleeve and tried to wipe it off fast, but it only smeared darker across the leather. My chest tightened. It felt like I was dragging something with me, like the blood was a shadow I couldn't shake. The corridor ahead was narrow, lined with pipes overhead. They hissed now and then, letting out bursts of steam that fogged the light bulbs. I kept walking, trying to stay calm, trying not to look back at that door I just escaped. But every step echoed too loud, like someone else was following me. That's when I noticed the window. It didn't make sense. There shouldn't have been windows here. We were underground. The walls were concrete, rough and damp. Yet halfway down the hall, set into the left wall, was a rectangular frame with glass so clean it almost glowed. Behind it, I saw a room. No lights inside, just shadows shifting, too many shapes to count. I froze, leaning in a little. My breath fogged the glass. One of the shadows stopped moving. It turned. Even though I couldn't see its face, I knew. It was staring at me. My stomach dropped. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the damp floor. Then my eyes caught something scratched into the frame of the window. The words were shallow but readable. Rule 11, if the window looks back, don't blink. My eyes widened. Don't blink, what kind of rule was that? But the longer I stared, the more I realized why. The shadow was leaning closer. Slowly, its outline sharpened, shoulders. A head tilted slightly as if curious. And then I saw its eyes. Two faint glimmers, pale white in the dark. They locked on mine. My eyes burned almost instantly. The air in the hallway felt like sandpaper, drying them out, forcing me to blink. I held my breath, trying to stay still, trying to keep my eyes open. Every second stretched longer than the last. My lashes trembled. My vision blurred. The shadow pressed against the glass now. The pain rattled under its weight, though it shouldn't have been possible. Its face was close enough that I should have seen details. But there was nothing there. Just skin too smooth, too empty, except for those eyes. My throat burned. I couldn't hold it anymore. I blinked. And the window went black. Not empty, not gone. Just black, like someone had pulled a shade down on the other side. The silence after was deafening. I waited, heart hammering, for something to happen, for glass to shatter, for a hand to reach through, for that whispering voice on the radio to warn me. But nothing came. I should have been relieved. I wasn't, because when I turned, the hallway behind me wasn't empty anymore. Something stood there. It had the same pale eyes. I staggered back, hitting the wall. My hands fumbled for the folder as if holding the rules could protect me. The figure didn't move closer, but it didn't fade either. It just stood, watching. My radio crackled suddenly, loud enough to make me jump. The voice came through, strained, almost breaking. "You blinked." The figure tilted its head at the exact same moment. Like it heard the voice too. I broke. I ran. The corridor twisted, each turn sharper than the last. Pipes clanged above, and somewhere in the dark, I swore I heard the sound of bare feet slapping against the concrete, keeping pace. No matter how fast I went, the echo stayed right behind me. Finally, I burst into another chamber, bigger, wider, with high ceilings. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead. For a moment, I thought I'd found safety. But then I saw the walls, mirrors, all four sides, floor to ceiling, covered in glass. And every single one showed me not alone, but with it, the pale-eyed figure, standing right over my shoulder even when I turned and found nothing there. I dropped the folder, rules scattering across the floor. My hands dug into my hair as I spun, my chest tight, sweat stinging my eyes. No matter which way I looked, the mirrors insisted it was with me. Then, on the far wall, words began to appear as if scratched fresh by an unseen hand. Rule 12, the watcher never leaves. Once seen, it stays. I backed toward the center of the room, shaking my head, muttering under my breath. No, I didn't want this. I didn't want any of this. The mirrors pulsed once, light flickering across their surfaces. My reflection wavered, and in that split second I saw myself with pale eyes too. That broke me. I grabbed the papers, shoved them back into the folder, and sprinted to the only door on the far end. My shoulder slammed into it hard enough to bruise, but it opened, throwing me back into darkness. The air inside felt colder, heavier, but for the first time in minutes I couldn't hear footsteps behind me, just my own ragged breathing. I leaned against the wall, shaking, clutching the folder like it was a lifeline. But in the silence, a thought lodged in my head and refused to leave. If the watcher never leaves, did I just bring it with me? When I shut that door behind me, I thought I'd finally left the watcher on the other side. The silence was thick, but it wasn't comforting. It was like stepping into a room that had been waiting for me. My breathing slowed, but the pounding in my head didn't. The rules kept slipping through my mind like I was trying to remember a dream. The watcher never leaves. Those words wouldn't let go. The hallway I was in now felt different, colder. The lights here were dim, long fluorescent bulbs hanging unevenly from the ceiling. Some buzzed faintly, others flickered just enough to throw shadows across the walls. I walked slowly, trying to steady myself, folder clutched tight to my chest. The further I went, the more I realized the air smelled burned, like wires frying behind the walls. Halfway down the hall, the buzzing lights snapped out. One by one, pop, 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 until the entire corridor went black. I froze. My breath hitched. My ears strained against the silence, searching for anything, footsteps, a whisper, even the hum of the lights. But there was nothing. Just darkness pressing on all sides. Then the radio crackled. Static hissed for a few seconds, then that same tired voice spoke low, almost like it was whispering just for me. Rule 13, if the lights die, stay still until the shift is done. My throat went dry. Stay still. How long was the shift? My hands were trembling, sweat slick on the folder I held. I wanted to run, but every instinct told me that would be breaking the rule. And I'd already seen what happened when you broke one, so I stood there. Seconds dragged into minutes. My legs ached. My lungs fought me, begging to let out the breath I was holding. I tried counting in my head, tried thinking about anything else, but the silence was too heavy. It swallowed everything. That's when I heard it, a scrape. Somewhere down the hall, Metal against concrete, slow, long, like something dragging. My chest tightened. I didn't dare move. The scrape came again, closer this time. My fingers dug into the folder so hard the edges cut into my palm. I couldn't see it. Whatever it was, the darkness was too complete, but I could feel it. The way the air shifted with each drag, like the space itself bent around it. Then, soft and deliberate, I heard breathing. Not mine, deeper, wet, like each inhale was a struggle. It was close now, maybe 10 feet away. I bit my lip hard enough to taste blood, desperate to stay still. The thing stopped. For a moment, the silence returned. My mind screamed at me not to move, not even to twitch, and then warm air brushed against my face. It was right there, inches from me. I couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, but I felt it, heavy and alive. My chest wanted to convulse, wanted to gasp, but I forced myself to hold steady. The radio clicked softly again, a whisper barely audible. "Don't breathe it in." My stomach flipped. "Don't breathe it in." What did that mean? I tried keeping my lips sealed, but the air was thick, almost oily. My lungs screamed. Black spots danced across my vision even though I couldn't see anything in the first place. The breathing shifted, circling me now, slow, careful. It was like it was studying me, waiting for the smallest mistake. My knees threatened to buckle, but I locked them, shaking under the weight of staying still. I don't know how long it lasted. Maybe seconds, maybe hours, but eventually the scrape returned. Slow, deliberate, dragging away down the hall. Each pull grew softer until there was only silence again. And just as sudden as they'd gone out, the lights blinked back on. I gasped for air, doubling over, my chest heaving. The hallway looked the same, pipes, flickering bulbs, damp concrete walls. Nothing out of place. But the smear on the floor, a long, dark streak running past me into the shadows ahead, proved I hadn't imagined it. The radio came to life again, louder this time. The voice was harsher, almost like it was scolding me. "You lasted, good, but remember, blackouts don't end for everyone." My hand shook so hard the folder nearly slipped from my grip. I pressed it against my chest, trying to calm down, trying to remind myself that I was still here, still alive. But something about the way the voice said that, "Not everyone makes it," sat heavy in my stomach. I forced myself forward, one step at a time. I didn't want to think about what would have happened if I'd moved or breathed too deep or panicked. But the blood on my boot reminded me the rules weren't just warnings, they were survival. At the end of the corridor, I found a steel door, heavy, rusted, handle worn smooth. Someone had carved into the metal with what looked like fingernails, 3 words etched over and over: "No more shifts." I hesitated, staring at it. My hand hovered over the handle. Whoever had written that, did they survive? Did they break the rule, or did they keep it until they couldn't anymore? The radio hissed again, snapping me out of my thoughts. This time the voice wasn't tired, it was urgent. "Get inside now." My heart jumped. I pulled the door open and stumbled through. The slam echoed behind me, leaving me in yet another room, another stretch of whatever nightmare this facility was. But I couldn't shake the feeling that the scrape, the breath, and the shadow in the window weren't left behind. They were following, and somewhere deep down I knew I hadn't seen the last shift. The steel door clanged shut behind me, and the echo carried for too long, bouncing like the room didn't want to let it go. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. No buzzing lights, no scrape on the floor, no heavy breathing. Just silence so deep it made my ears ring. For a second, I thought maybe I'd finally stepped into a safer part of this place. I was wrong. The room was narrow, lined with pipes running along the walls and ceiling. Steam hissed from a few joints, leaving the air damp and metallic. It smelled like rust and mold mixed together, the kind of stink that sits heavy in your throat. I tried the light switch next to the door. Nothing, of course. I started forward slowly, boots clicking against the concrete. Every sound felt too loud. That's when I noticed it, faint at first, almost like the whisper of air moving through the pipes. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. A voice. I froze. It wasn't coming from in front of me or behind me. It was inside the walls. At first it was just murmurs, like someone speaking in another room, muffled by drywall. But as I pressed my ear closer to the pipes, the words sharpened. They weren't random, they were sentences. Rule 15, don't listen too long. My stomach dropped. The voice in the walls was reciting the rules. The same rules written in that blood-stained folder. Only this voice was softer, almost gentle, like it was coaxing me, pulling me in. I yanked my head back from the pipe, heart racing. But even standing away from the wall, I could still hear it. The whispers snaked around the room, impossible to pinpoint. My pulse hammered in my ears, making it hard to tell if the words were getting louder or if I was just losing it. The folder slipped in my sweaty grip, and I pulled it open with shaking hands. Sure enough, Rule 15 was there, underlined 3 times. Don't listen too long, but what counted as too long? 10 seconds, a minute. I clenched my jaw, trying not to focus on the voice, but it was everywhere. I couldn't block it out. Then the tone shifted. At first it was still calm, but it stopped repeating the rules. It started saying other things, things it shouldn't know. It whispered my name. Daniel. My whole body locked up. The voice stretched my name out, slow and careful, like it wanted me to feel every letter. Daniel, you're not supposed to be here. I stumbled back, clutching the folder like it could protect me. My eyes darted across the room, searching for a speaker, a crack, something. But the walls were solid, just concrete and pipes. The voice kept talking, threading between the pipes, low and smooth. Do you know why the last guard quit? My chest tightened. I didn't want to know. I told myself not to respond, not to engage. But the silence I tried to keep felt heavier than speaking. My throat worked against me. Why? I whispered before I could stop myself. The voice chuckled, soft but sharp, like nails on glass. He didn't quit, he listened. My blood ran cold. I pressed my palms to my ears, trying to drown it out. The muffled sound helped, but not enough. The voice bled through, whispering about things I hadn't told anyone, memories, regrets, mistakes. It whispered about my father, about the night I left home, about the debt I never paid back. How do you know that? I hissed, shaking. Silence. Then, closer than ever, right behind my left ear. Because I'm still in him. I bolted. I sprinted down the hall, folder tucked under my arm, boots slamming against the floor. The pipes rattled above me like the voice was chasing me through them. My lungs burned, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The hall ended in another steel door. I slammed my shoulder into it, fumbling with the handle until it gave way. I stumbled into the next room, slamming the door shut behind me. The whispers stopped. For a moment I thought I'd outrun it, but the radio on my belt clicked on, the static breaking the silence. The tired voice returned. You listened, didn't you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Don't lie, we can hear it in you. My knees buckled and I slid down against the door, chest heaving. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I hadn't really heard what I thought I did. But the words clung to me, crawling under my skin. I flipped open the folder again. Rule 16 was scrawled at the bottom of the page like it had been added later hastily. The ink was smeared, but I could still make it out. If the voice learns your name, don't answer it. My breath caught. My lips trembled as I mouthed the words over and over. I had already broken it. And deep inside, past the fear, a seed of something else started to grow. because the voice in the walls wasn't gone. It was inside me now. The steel door clanged shut behind me, and the echo carried for too long, bouncing like the room didn't want to let it go. The first thing I noticed was how quiet it was. No buzzing lights, no scrape on the floor, no heavy breathing. Just silence so deep it made my ears ring. For a second, I thought maybe I'd finally stepped into a safer part of this place. I was wrong. The room was narrow, lined with pipes running along the walls and ceiling. Steam hissed from a few joints, leaving the air damp and metallic. It smelled like rust and mold mixed together, the kind of stink that sits heavy in your throat. I tried the light switch next to the door. Nothing, of course. I started forward slowly, boots clicking against the concrete. Every sound felt too loud. That's when I noticed it, faint at first, almost like the whisper of air moving through the pipes. But the longer I listened, the clearer it became. A voice. I froze. It wasn't coming from in front of me or behind me. It was inside the walls. At first it was just murmurs, like someone speaking in another room, muffled by drywall. But as I pressed my ear closer to the pipes, the words sharpened. They weren't random, they were sentences. Rule 15, don't listen too long. My stomach dropped. The voice in the walls was reciting the rules. The same rules written in that blood-stained folder. Only this voice was softer, almost gentle, like it was coaxing me, pulling me in. I yanked my head back from the pipe, heart racing. But even standing away from the wall, I could still hear it. The whispers snaked around the room, impossible to pinpoint. My pulse hammered in my ears, making it hard to tell if the words were getting louder or if I was just losing it. The folder slipped in my sweaty grip, and I pulled it open with shaking hands. Sure enough, Rule 15 was there, underlined 3 times. Don't listen too long, but what counted as too long? 10 seconds, a minute. I clenched my jaw, trying not to focus on the voice, but it was everywhere. I couldn't block it out. Then the tone shifted. At first it was still calm, but it stopped repeating the rules. It started saying other things, things it shouldn't know. It whispered my name. Daniel. My whole body locked up. The voice stretched my name out, slow and careful, like it wanted me to feel every letter. Daniel, you're not supposed to be here. I stumbled back, clutching the folder like it could protect me. My eyes darted across the room, searching for a speaker, a crack, something, but the walls were solid, just concrete and pipes. The voice kept talking, threading between the pipes, low and smooth. Do you know why the last guard quit? My chest tightened. I didn't want to know. I told myself not to respond, not to engage, but the silence I tried to keep felt heavier than speaking. My throat worked against me. Why? I whispered before I could stop myself. The voice chuckled, soft but sharp, like nails on glass. He didn't quit, he listened. My blood ran cold. I pressed my palms to my ears, trying to drown it out. The muffled sound helped, but not enough. The voice bled through, whispering about things I hadn't told anyone, memories, regrets, mistakes. It whispered about my father, about the night I left home, about the debt I never paid back. How do you know that? I hissed, shaking. Silence. Then, closer than ever, right behind my left ear. Because I'm still in him. I bolted. I sprinted down the hall, folder tucked under my arm, boots slamming against the floor. The pipes rattled above me like the voice was chasing me through them. My lungs burned, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. The hall ended in another steel door. I slammed my shoulder into it, fumbling with the handle until it gave way. I stumbled into the next room, slamming the door shut behind me. The whispers stopped. For a moment I thought I'd outrun it, but the radio on my belt clicked on, the static breaking the silence. The tired voice returned. You listened, didn't you? I didn't answer. I couldn't. Don't lie, we can hear it in you. My knees buckled and I slid down against the door, chest heaving. I tried to convince myself I'd imagined it, that I hadn't really heard what I thought I did. But the words clung to me, crawling under my skin. I flipped open the folder again. Rule 16 was scrawled at the bottom of the page like it had been added later hastily. The ink was smeared, but I could still make it out. If the voice learns your name, don't answer it. My breath caught. My lips trembled as I mouthed the words over and over. I had already broken it. And deep inside, past the fear, a seed of something else started to grow. Because the voice in the walls wasn't gone. It was inside me now. If this story pulled you in, don't look away now. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, because this isn't the end. It never really ends. The next part will show you what happens after you've been marked, and trust me, you'll wish you hadn't missed it.